Yes. So what I said that the title is Applied Linguistics Theory and Practice, and we will study what is applied linguistics. So when you hear this word applied linguistics, some questions occur in your mind. And what are those questions? First question is, what is applied linguistics? That is the basic question. What is applied linguistics? What is an applied linguist? So one is, we want to know about the discipline, and in the second question we want to know a practitioner of applied linguistics. What do applied linguists do? So again, this question is concerned about the practitioner who is practicing applied linguistics. Then question 4 is, what is the scope of applied linguistics? That means that applied linguistics, that knowledge of applied linguistics can be used where? Where can you use that knowledge? So once you have a knowledge, you apply that knowledge over something. So this question states that where can you apply this knowledge? So what is the scope of applied linguistics? How does applied linguistics differ from theoretical linguistics? So one thing we know that at least there are two different disciplines. One is theoretical linguistics and another one is applied linguistics. We will discuss what is the difference between them. How does applied linguistics relate to other disciplines like sociology, psychology, philosophy, literary theory, and such other disciplines? So one thing is, applied linguistics is also a discipline. And if something is a discipline, then it requires disciplined study. So when we say applied, the meaning of applied is application. Application of the knowledge that you have learned in linguistics. That is basically applied linguistics. Now, what you studied in linguistics, if you ponder on that what you studied in the last semester, you will find that you studied phonetics and phonology, you studied morphology, you studied syntax, you studied a bit of semantics. So phonetics and phonology, morphology, syntax, and semantics, they are theoretical linguistics. They are the part of theoretical linguistics. If we consider linguistics as an umbrella, then under that umbrella you will find phonology, phonetics, you will find morphology, you will find syntax, you will find semantics as well. So these fields, they give you some knowledge. For example, phonetics and phonology talks about the principles of the sound system in a particular language or in general. For example, in morphology, you study how the words, the internal structure of the words. So how words are structured internally, that you study. In syntax, you study how words they come together and make different types of sentences, different type of sentence structure. So that is a theoretical knowledge that you have. Then you also know about the fallacy, language fallacies, and you also have a scientific view about what is linguistics. So when you have this knowledge that, okay, these are sounds, how these sounds are pronounced, how you can describe a sound, what is a morpheme, fine, what is a noun phrase, what is a verb phrase. When you have this type of knowledge, then where can you apply that knowledge? So you can apply that knowledge to different fields. So that is the application part. The application part is to applying that knowledge to different fields. Let's say if you apply the knowledge of syntax in your second language class. Second language class means like someone who is studying English language in a formal setup, in a formal institution. Like most of us, we study English language in the formal setup. Our mother tongues are different. but English language we study in a formal setup. So how can we use the knowledge of syntax? So you can use that knowledge of syntax. For example, there is a sentence, John loves Mary. Now in this sentence, John loves Mary, you know that John is the subject, love is a verb, and Mary is an object. So what is the information that you have? You know that English is a subject verb object language. So once you teach a student this sentence or this type of sentence, then first thing you will tell that languages are different and English language is different from the Hindi language. So in Hindi language you have subject, object and verb. So Hindi language is a verb ending language, whereas English language is where object comes in the end when the verb is transitive. So verb is a transitive verb here. So what is a transitive verb? You can also tell your student that transitive verb is a type of verb that requires two arguments. So one argument is John, another argument is Mary. Both are noun phrases. So John loves Mary. You can also tell your students that if you change the word order, if you say Mary loves John, then the meaning will also change. So you can tell your students that the word order in the English language is fixed, but that will not happen in the Hindi language. So for example, if you translate the same sentence, John loves Mary, in Hindi, the translation will be like John Mary se प्यार करता है. Hey, auxiliary. Hey is your auxiliary. It comes in the last. So Hindi is a verb ending language. The basic order of the Hindi language is verb ending. Subject, object and verb. But when you change the order, for example, if you say प्यार करता है John Mary से, there is no change in the meaning. If you say Mary से प्यार करता है John, again there is no change in meaning. If you say John प्यार करता है Mary से, then again there is no change in meaning. So we can say that in the Hindi language, word order is relatively free. It is not fixed like the English language. So what we are doing, we are applying the knowledge of linguistics to second language learning classroom. So second language learning classroom or the field that deals with the second language teachers and learners and that environment, that is known as ELT, that is English language teaching. So one such field under applied linguistics is ELT, that means English language teaching. Now this is one example. Now you have this knowledge of, again we will take the example of syntax, that you know how words they come together and make a sentence. So you have different type of sentences. For example, you have a declarative sentence, you have imperative sentence, then you have exclamative sentence, and you have interrogative sentence. So basically you have these four types of sentences in English language. Now we are applying this knowledge of linguistics to literature. Now in literature there is one sonnet written by Shakespeare. Now what is this sonnet? This sonnet starts with, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer lease hath all too short a date. Sometimes too hot the eyes of heaven shines. Dot dot dot. It goes on like this. Now, what is more important for us? We are dealing with the application of linguistic knowledge to this sonnet. Let's say we want to apply. So let's take the example from this sonnet. The first line, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Now, how can we apply our linguistic knowledge? Our linguistic knowledge tells us that in the English language, when we want to construct a question, then it must start with either WH or auxiliary. Now shall is an auxiliary, modal auxiliary. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Now Shakespeare is not saying I shall compare thee to a summer's day. If it is I shall compare thee to a summer's day, then it will become a declarative sentence. But here what is happening? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? That means we have now a question. So it starts with an auxiliary and it ends with a mark of interrogation. So this information we have. But linguistic knowledge will also tell us that what type of question is this? Because we have two types of question. One type of question is when the person really seeks an answer. So for example, if I do not know your name, then I will ask, what is your name? And you will tell me, my name is such and such. So that is one type of question where I really want to know. But do you think Shakespeare really wants to know, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Do you think that Shakespeare is really asking his readers a permission that shall I compare thee, or Shakespeare is really asking to his beloved that shall I compare thee to a summer's day? No. So that means this is not a question of inquiry. Then what type of question is this? Then this is a rhetorical question. Now what is a rhetorical question? In a rhetorical question, the person who raises the question provides the answer as well. So what is the second line? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. So what Shakespeare is saying, Shakespeare is providing the answer. You are more lovely and more temperate. That means you are more lovely and more temperate than the summer's day. And not the summers in India, but summers in England. So this is again like you can apply your linguistics knowledge to literature. When you apply your linguistics knowledge to literature, then it is stylistics. So again, stylistics is also the part of applied linguistics. So similarly, literary theory, let's say literary theory we have. Now in literary theory, we have this concept like structuralism, and this concept of structuralism is provided by Ferdinand de Saussure. So Ferdinand de Saussure you can consider as the founder of structuralism. And we have seen, we have studied that Saussure talks about sign, Saussure talks about signifier, Saussure talks about signified. Saussure says three important things. What are they? First thing is uh, the relationship between signifier and signified is arbitrary. Fine. So that means there is no one-to-one relationship. Then what Ferdinand de Saussure says that language is a system of systems. Language is a system of differences. So the system of systems and system of differences, these are the principles of language posited by Ferdinand de Saussure. So when we are into structuralism, when we are analyzing a text, then we can use these concepts, like we can use what is paradigmatic, what is syntagmatic, what is signifier, what is signified, how does a sign constitute meaningfulness. So again, this application of linguistics knowledge to literary theory is also very much applicable. So that is also uh, a matter of uh, applied linguistics. It's related to applied linguistics. Then similarly, sociology. Now, sociology is the study of society. So how can linguistics is associated with society? If I raise the question that where do you use language, then the answer is in society. You use language in society. You use language with people. So there are different types of languages. Yes. So for example, there is a word like interest. And if I ask, what are your interests? Then the meaning is I am asking about your likes and dislikes. So you will say, okay, I like reading. You say, I like cricket. Then you say, like, I dislike football. Um, you will say, okay, I like moving out a lot. So that type of things is interest. But let's say I use the word interest in a banking system, and I will ask a banker or a manager in a bank that how much interest I will get for that FD, fixed deposit. Then the person will say, okay, 5% you will get. So is there a difference between these two interests? One interest that is used by the banker, the manager, and another interest in day-to-day conversation. Obviously, there is a difference. That means the interest used in the banking sector is a register for the banking sector. For example, you have words like credit, you have words like debit, you have words like interest, you have words like uh, current account. So all such are the words that banking people they use quite often. So that is the part of their terminology. So that means that is their register. When we study linguistics, then when we use the words like signifier, signified, phonology, morphology, phoneme, assimilation. So that is the register, that is the terminology of linguistics. So similarly, linguistics has so much to tell about a society, so much to tell about a speech community. So speech community is a community, first of all, that speaks the same variety of language and that is understandable to all. So with all its nitty-gritties, they speak a language which is understandable to all, and we can see like how language functions. We also know that there is a variety known as South Indian English. We also know there is a variety like North Indian English. We also know that in a language we have two different dialects. Um, let's say we have a dialect like a Kandi Dogri and we have a dialect like Pahadi Dogri. So all such things are applicable. So how does applied linguistics relate to other disciplines? We are looking at that. Psychology. Now psychology, when you hear this word psychology, then the word mind comes into your mind. So that means like psychology is something related to mind we are talking about. And if I raise you a question that where do you find language in human being, you will say in the mind. Language is stored in the mind. So mind is that abstract thing, but what is there? It is brain. So brain is a biological organ that you have. So it's in the brain you have. And if I say like, do you know anything more about brain? You will say, okay, brain is divided into two hemisphere, right hemisphere and left hemisphere. You will say left hemisphere is responsible for logical thinking, and right hemisphere is responsible for understanding of melody, music, drawing, concepts, diagrams. So what is this? Language is associated with mind. Which are the areas that are responsible for language comprehension? Broca area, Wernicke area. So all such things are like which areas are responsible for the production. So that means when you study all such things, then again it is a part of applied linguistics. So you have different disciplines, sociology, and once you have sociology plus language, it becomes sociolinguistics. So when you have psychology and psychology plus language, it becomes psycholinguistics. Fine. So once you have philosophy plus language, then you have language philosophy. So once you have this literary theory plus language, then you have language theories. And most of these literary theories, they have borrowed so much from linguistics. So who is an applied linguist? The person who has the knowledge of linguistics. That is first thing. That is the first requirement, that if you want to become an applied linguist, then first thing is you must have a knowledge of linguistics. So you must have a knowledge of phonetics and phonology. You must have a knowledge of morphology. You must have a knowledge of syntax, semantics, pragmatics. And once you have that knowledge, then you can apply that knowledge. You can apply that knowledge to different fields like society, sociology, psychology, mind, philosophy, literary theory, and other such disciplines. So these questions I have tried to answer. I have tried to answer, and I hope that with that you must have got some fair idea that what we are going to do in this subject, applied linguistics, theory and practice. So first we will deal with language as a social practice. So what we are doing, we are mixing language plus sociology, language plus society. So we know that what is why language is important in a society. We know because we want, when we want to communicate with other person, then obviously we need a language. So in a way, language is a vehicle. Here is the metaphor that I am using. Language is a tool. So you are using language, and you talk to each other. But what is more important, saying all the time and not listening? No, saying and listening, both speaking and listening, both are important. So here we will look at hearing others perspective. So why it is important to listen first and then speak. So there is a short story, and what is that short story? I'm reading it for you. A group of blind men or unenlightened men walk into a dark room and touch an elephant, each one feeling a different part, not knowing that it was part of an elephant. So elephant, you already have a concept of elephant. Elephant is such a huge animal. So imagine a situation that elephant is in again a larger room. A large animal is in a larger room, and there are five blind men. They are also inside, and they are trying to comprehend. So blind by birth, so they have not seen elephant previously, and they do not know about such creature known as elephant. So what they are doing, they are touching the different parts of elephant, not knowing that it was a part of an elephant. One of them touches the leg, another touches the tusk, another touches the tail, and when they come out of the room and begin to describe what each of them felt, they fall into dispute as to what the truth is, because each one has different perspective. So someone who has touched the tusk has a different perspective. Someone who has touched the tail has different perspective. Someone who has touched the trunk has different perspective. Someone who has touched ears has different perspective, and someone who has touched the stomach or legs, that has different perspective. So if the question arises that what is the reason behind the dispute? The reason behind the dispute is like everyone is trying to prove I am right. Whatever I have perceived, that is correct. And no one wants to hear another person's perspective. And because of that, there is a dispute, there is a conflict, and there is no consensus. So think of a situation that you are discussing a topic in a group discussion. So this is a similar type of situation. A group of blind men walk into a dark room. So similarly, like five people, they are sitting in a room, and there is a topic given to them, and they are discussing that topic, and each one has their novel perspective. So each one has one's own perspective, and they are very adamant. They are very stubborn that okay, my perspective is only correct, only right, and I'm not ready to hear other person's perspective. Then what will happen in that situation? In that situation, it will lead to a dispute. It will lead to a conflict, and because you are not patient and you do not want to listen to other person's perspective. So that is, language is a vehicle, and when we use this metaphor vehicle, then vehicle we use to going from one place to another place. So we are not saying that language is a weapon, that okay, I have a language and I am going to kill you, or I have a weapon and I'm going to prove that okay, I am right and all people are wrong. We are not using that language is a weapon. We are saying language is a vehicle, and vehicle is, we commute through vehicle, we sit in a vehicle, we drive a vehicle, and we reach to one place to another place. So similarly, what is in my mind, and if I want to put that thing in your mind, then I need to use language as a vehicle, because otherwise that thing will never go in your mind. So what is in your mind, and if I want to know what is in your mind, then obviously you need to speak that language. So what is important here, and with this I will end this class also, the important is to hear other person's perspective. Language as a social practice, language is not a destructive tool, it's a social practice. We need to socialize, we need to make friends. Though there is a possibility that using language you will make so many enemies as well, so that means then you are not an effective user of language. So with this, I stop here. And if you have any doubt, you can raise your doubt, you can ask me. I'll be happy to answer.